if someone wants to follow this up later. If someone has any question, just put in the chat here. If you don't know very well English, I can translate back from Italian in case. And if someone wants to speak directly with the microphone, let's say, you can always raise your hands. You have the options on top right. But Jan, the stage is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for attending. Let me just get my notes on. Whoops. Things probably just went away for you. Here we go. My name's Ian Brody. I'm the designer of Quartermaster General, published by Ares. There's a World War II and a 1914 version, and now an East Front version, which you might have seen a presentation earlier. And there's more to come in an hour on the Ares. I say Ares. I realize it's Ares. Ares. On the Ares channel, I'll be talking about the product line. For this presentation, I wanted to talk about thematic gaming and thinking about it as a narrative, the way that history is generally presented in a book or on, documentaries, movies, whatnot, whatever media. I understood a lot of the sort of idea of Storia was to kind of broaden the scope and of historical gaming, maybe attract more Eurogamers to the historical gaming side, and also just talk about historical gaming in general of what's going on in the hobby and how it sort of crosses over into a non-hobby world, I suppose. I'll start now with what I've sort of typed up. That's sort of my untyped intro. So a few years ago, I was at a convention for new game designs, and I was trying to round up players to test one of my own games. I ended up having a brief conversation with a fellow game designer who I won't mention, but fairly famous, and he explained why he definitely would not be playing my game. Quote, "I won't play any game where the theme is important. For me, everything you need to know should be in the rules. No offense intended." So I don't take any offense. My wife owned a game store from 2001 to 2007. And during that time, when I started, as sort of the head game master on the weekends, I had a job in financial services at the time. I mean, at first I was a little bit annoyed. People come in and it's like, "Oh, I don't like games," and be like, "Who doesn't like games?" Or people would, whatever it was, "I don't like that kind of game." And eventually you realized, it's not like my job was not to convince people of what they should like. It's to give them what they like. Some are mono gamers. So we had people who only played chess, but bought multiple traveling chess sets and, chess clocks from us, or Magic the Gathering, or Warhammer 40K. So that's what I'm calling a mono gamer. And some other people will play any game because they look at it as a social experience. So that could be playing. They're just as likely to want to play Catan as to play a role-playing game, as to go on the football field and kick a ball around. If they're physically able, of course. I just clicked to a different slide. You'll saw that. I figured that you have something to look at a little bit while I go on. Okay, so some gamers won't play cooperative games because competition is critical. They're fun. And kind of leading to where historical games are, some gamers don't like math-heavy games. So my wife once said to me, and my wife is my principal developer, play tester, playmate. She said to me, "I never divide by 17. If dividing by 17 is part of the game, I don't play that game." So I know you all have, not you all, but many of you have probably played a lot of games where you divided by 17, like a Europa series or, you know, a lot of the Avalon Hill Classics, a stack of pieces. And so um, people get different people get different things out of gaming. And I think that rather than considering games as, say, you know what? I have the wrong presentation up. Jeez, you know what? I'm like, this is not right. Okay, me bad. That's for next time. Um, I'm sorry. That's really lame of me. Um, Here we go. All right, this is where I want to be. Woo! Very professional. I'm glad I can't hear you all. Yeah. Um,
I think that you are still not sharing the screen, Weber, so we are not able to
okay.
see.
Can you not see? You're looking at me. I didn't even realize it. Okay, let me make sure. Oh, you know what it is? Because the application quit. Okay, there we go.
Okay, now
Yeah.
we see. Now we
Okay,
see.
I'm sorry. I'm so
Don't
sorry
worry, don't
about
worry.
that. And I'm, you know, trying to. I shouldn't have agreed to do two separate things. Clearly, it was too much complexity for me. Um, okay. Um, but rather than consider games by like there's these marketing categories, so we can say there's a war game or a Euro or an art role-playing game, but I'd rather think about, I realize that my own games that I like, it would be very, very difficult to predict which games I would like and which games I will not like. So I think about my games in like, so I like role playing games, I like war games, I like you know, so I'll play sports, you know, like I do it as a social, but that's not my only uh important aspect of a game. So for example, these are different sort of dimensional axes. So like if you consider a multiple regression that you might say, and if you really wanted to go through an exercise, you could go through BGG or all your whole collection and say, start attributing, giving them attributes like, is this grounded in theme? Do I get to roll a lot of dice? And then figure out which ones you like, and then do a regression to figure out what's really important to you. A lot of people I realize don't like my games because there's no dice. And you think it's like, well, it's just a randomizer, but there's people who really like rolling dice. And being honest with yourself about it is okay. It's like, it's okay to like what you like. But what I also think is that you're going to find one, games that you like that you hadn't considered if you look at it like through these sort of dimensional axes. So, and most important one is my wife will play this game. So I won't buy a game if I don't think my wife will play it with me. And I've got a bunch on the shelf that I bought that we tried and she doesn't like, that I'll probably end up selling just because um, most of the time, if I'm not playing with her, then I'm playing with somebody else who already has the game. Not that I want you to sell your used games. You should always buy new games. Okay. Sorry. Again, glad I don't hear you. Um, all right. So, I believe that some of the most of these axes of sort of game um, qualities, and not quality like high quality, but like descriptive um, um, qualities. They exist on a spectrum. For thematic games, I believe there is the designer's intent starts on one end of the spectrum and then eases its way inwards. So a lot of Euro games are strictly abstract, and then they put a theme on it because what's obvious to game publishers is people like a theme. That people don't want just black and white pieces on, with arrows and dots. They want to see like boats sailing or, medieval cities or whatever it is. And representational games and are coming from this point of trying to be a simulation and then abstracting themselves to the point where it's a playable game. So, and I'm looking at this dimension in the very sort of um, um, other sense that other artworks look at art. So abstract paintings, with Mondrian or Kandinsky, compared to representational, like Rembrandt or Da Vinci or whatever. And in music, you can think the Well-Tempered Clavier as a abstract piece because it's just about showing it's just about going through the music as an abstract concept and has nothing to do with the rest of the world. Whereas, like, a Wagner's opera would be representation. Blocus would be a, strictly abstract game, I think, that is a really good game, in my opinion, even though mostly I like thematic games for whatever reason. And I'm not even very good at it. Maybe I like it because my kid can beat me at it pretty regularly. Um, all right, so here we have things that we might look at in terms of themes. So I happen to not like zombies. Like I I have every XNLized game or at one point did, except for the XNLized zombies because I just don't like them as enemies. I get it that they're like guilt-free things that you can kill, but somehow just not interesting. Um, I do like tanks. So my sweet spot, one of my sweet spots is that yellow spot between thematic games and tanks. Most abstract games I don't like. I like some, but not that many. That's so I think that's sort of like just because you like theme may be that some theme you don't like, and that's how it goes. Again, there's nothing wrong with what you like or don't like. It's more about identifying it. Um, okay. So so I mean, as you can see, I probably just to meta to discuss my own presentation. I'm trying to like we're trying to bridge this gap between what you like and finding these games and the designer's intent. Um, okay. Um, so now part of this is assuming you do like thematic games because you're at Storia. So now thematic games have a border with the rest of the universe, and past that border you can't change things. So if you're doing a World War II game and it starts in September of 1939, you don't get to change August of 1939. So you have to decide what that border is, and you then have to make sure that all the things that connect your game to the border are in place, so it validates, so that the thematic gamer can say it went from in time and spatial, it connected with the known universe, and it did a reasonable thing in between. So to me, so like Napoleon marched from the Duchy of Warsaw to Moscow in 82 days. Okay. And they did some shooting in between there. If you're in your game in 90 days in one quarter, there's no possibility of Napoleon's army from going from Warsaw to Moscow. Well, then I have a problem validating it because I'm like, if there's no possibility, like there should be a possibility because that's what actually happened. In fact, you might start on the basis that what happened in history is the median result. I don't know what it is, but let's just, without knowing anything better, that would be a logical presumption. If you're testing your game and and Napoleon never seems to make it past Smolensk, well, then it could be, but the mechanics would allow the game to get, would allow the army to get to Moscow. Then, then yes, it's like then what you're doing is probably showing your bias, and so um, designers, like historians, designers of thematic games have a bias about the history. So there's essentially a belief, but a historian will write that belief in. Whereas designers, it's kind of implicit or sometimes a little bit hard to dig out because sometimes the designer doesn't even know they have a bias particularly. So that may be the bias that is um, like the bias. Well, let's just look at this diagram for a second. So here in this situation, we have your validation of the theme against the result of the game. So at the very center in the red dot is the historical outcome. Again, without knowing anything else about it or making a case that the historical outcome is not the median outcome, then basically we'll target the median. So now all of these results are results that may be coming through playtesting. And the ones in the dark gray area are results where the player says, that was really close to history, but a little bit different. I really feel like I went through that. The light gray ones were like, wow, that was sort of crazy, but cool. And then the ones in the white area are like, okay, that's nuts. That doesn't have anything to do with history or the theme. So it may be that that maybe makes it a more fun game, and when you're designing, but we're only talking about this one aspect is thematic gaming validation. And I like, again, all these different axes. If you like a lot of variety in a game or variety of outcomes, you might like a game where those bands are wider to encompass all of those outcomes. So now you'll notice that if you look at the scatter plot, in fact, the median of your game is probably a little bit upwards of the red dot. And so essentially you may have a bias in your game that says, actually, I think that these sort of outcomes is the more likely. So for example, if the Soviet Union had taken, if Stalin had been more, believing that Germany was about to attack, he might have done a better job, and that you think the median should be slightly, towards the idea that Stalin would be a little bit more attentive. But but essentially, if the outcomes of your games are like that, then you built that in, and it's up for the players to sort of decide if that's true or not. I mean, it's designers' notes go a long way, but I think it's to me it's very interesting, but it's really about that validation process. And that validation process is what makes thematic games fun for people. All right. So when you're determining your decision space, and so the decision space is the boundaries within where the game exists. So, when you are in that decision space, you have to identify the protagonist. It could be a person, it could be a country, it could be anything, and obviously a game could be a group. It could have multiple protagonists because they have multiple sides, but essentially, like you have to there is a main protagonist and antagonist, and usually it's obvious. And I'm not. I hate to say it. It's just that history is, what the quote. It's written by the victors. But even if it's not, there's usually a version that's written from a certain standpoint, and on the other side is also working through that with that person and enjoys that story, even if they're the antagonist. And you don't have to be the good guy to be the protagonist, like, it could be an anti-hero. So, for example, in a game about France 1940, it's like the German lower level commanders who, didn't stop when they were told and saw the weakness in the French layout, realized the certain forts were defeatable, etc. And then the game itself is telling that story. Now, I think France, because the other part as a design thing, which is not really part of this lecture, as it were, is that fun time. Um, Most people like games where there's about equal amount of fun time. Thematic gamers will accept less fun time, but they don't want to accept almost no fun time. So, the old Europa game, The Fall of France, if you know it, like it was a heavy duty war game, was much better as a solitaire because one person was, saddled with basically having to sit through not only a whole Axis turn, but an Axis surprise turn. And by the time it was over, they just had a few guys to be able to move around. So, so that part is just choosing the right theme and a theme that would be fun for a competitive game. I think so really in this decision space, it's about telling the story. Is that you're setting the borders, and then that decision space tells the story of the theme, and that's what the game is supposed to be doing. Um, all right, I jumped. I don't have a great slide for ahead, so um, now expressing the decision space and telling the story. Um, a lot of it is about the game design. What do you like? My wife tends to get bored. She'll like a big game, but after about 5 hours, 6 hours, she's like, okay, I really don't want to do this that much. Maybe we can pick it up. She also sure doesn't like playing a game where she's losing and then still knows she has like 2 or 3 more hours to actually be able to walk away. And so that's also something where that's a game design thing, but that's a constraint that I myself have to then, um, being she's the head developer and she's the one I'm sort of, designing the games to play with. So, so the decision space for a lot of the Quartermaster General games is like what I try to do is find a level where you are only making the decisions at that level. So now, when you consider these officers here that are playing Quartermaster General, you might know they play a lot of other games, not just like you can hope and assume that they've got all sorts of tactical training and they play. I saw one of their games, Fire in the Lake, all different types of levels games. And so, why Quartermaster General? Well, the trainers there realized that these guys, and these are all guys who are officers training to be on command staffs, on like the guys who work for generals or go to congressmen and explain what's going on. And one of the things they realized is a lot of them don't know how to explain things succinctly and in a way that um, somebody who's a non-expert can understand, but make a logical decision. So, so one of the things is, um, so when they chose this game, so now this is a Quartermaster General World War II. You can play 90 minutes with, you have 6 people playing it. It goes faster actually, and and you're really making the decisions that were almost handed to you because it's a hand of cards, and so it's a little bit menu driven. And so from their standpoint, if you've, most of you probably worked in some corporation that you had to give your boss some options. Your boss doesn't want a research project, they want a menu. They want to, and probably some of the options you're presenting aren't that good. And so, or some of them you didn't present because they were bad. And so generally, that's what's managing upwards, is really like presenting options that, and presenting the trade-offs and presenting this, the situation on the ground in abstract terms, like we control this area, we can do stuff here, we don't, this is right now their area, etc. So, how do I know the theme works? Because people play who run these game training exercises, play a lot of games, and they have a curriculum, and they see if the game can be matched against the curriculum. Because I built it as a thematic game, as abstract it is, a lot of that stuff was built in without me. Like, I didn't have to do anything to build in that thematic architecture. What I was really doing was building something thematic, and I kept on abstracting it. The decision space is this top level decision maker, and finally the protagonist would be a national or multinational military policymaker. So possibly, an Eisenhower type level, and so and obviously, you don't have to do a lot of things Eisenhower would do, as, HR disputes and, all the rest. And also just the process of delegation. For most people who are CEO level, most of your day is spent delegating. So so the actual playing of the game only takes a few hours, and of course you don't have to make you're only losing little wooden guys, so you probably have to do a little less research. But anyhow, that's sort of the case study of Quartermaster General, fitting it into this parameters, and looking at it for people who don't want to divide by 17 and don't want to micromanage the people who are under them. If you've been in the military, you know that commanders will often. I have not been, but I've done a lot of played a lot of war games. So I guess that makes me a non-expert who can just BS. But having talked to military guys and hung out with some, and having a roommate who is ex-military, the officers don't command down to the smallest level. Like if you were thinking of a Europa game, there's no possibility that somebody who's looking at the whole map is also like worried about every single anti-aircraft battalion location. So it's, I mean, in some ways that's a less historical result, even though it's obviously more detailed. But I just take it as a bigger decision space, and your narrative is, like you're possibly a guy who is the guy who's in charge of keeping track of every battalion, in the general headquarters as your protagonist. Okay. After the game, one of the things, after a game's done and you're looking at the outcomes, there's a lot of sense making, I'll call it. So you're trying to understand what happened in the game, what you could have done differently, and how you might discuss that. So without knowing anything about a game system, and you walked up to a game table, you saw a map of Europe, and you heard somebody say, well, I was able to fend off Napoleon at Smolensk by wiping out the old guard with my reserve artillery, but in the end I lost more guys. I should have retreated right after that and let the French occupy Moscow, losing more from attrition. He ended up retreating to Warsaw with more guys than Napoleon did. Okay. Second time you walk up to a different table, different game. No, I actually deleted this. I thought it went on too long. Never mind. My point, I guess, is to say that a lot about that game because you know about the history. And if you didn't know anything about the history, then that game would make much less sense than if you said, um, I moved in 4 pieces. He had a clever move. He moved in 2 pieces, like that sort of abstract thing. Like if somebody were describing a game of Go, it would take, it's not that many hard rules, but you would know less about the game than that game that I just described, which is, fictitious game. All right. All right. So here, what's on your table? So after you've sort of probably done it in an informal manner, but thought about more broadly, one like what are the sort of things you really like in a game? So one of the things I found is that I mean I really like games where my wife will play with me, and she doesn't like heavy math games. Um, I really like games that are heavy thematic. I don't mind games that take a long time, and you know, there's and a lot of other things. So so these are the things I like. So now I'm not a giant squad leader fan, and because for a number of reasons, but one of the things I have in a game, one of my things that I like is I don't like looking at rules because I don't like downtime, and spending time while reading the rule book is sort of boring. So like squad leader or more specifically advanced squad leader would probably be better. Example would be for me it's just a little too much looking up the rules while you're playing, and and I think that the story behind it, I'm not sure if what makes it replayable is having so many different scenarios, but the stories are similar. Love, like, the captain who bravely, takes the building across the street. Um, but I just am like, I feel like it's not enough variety for me, but obviously it is for some people because they're mono gamers. I mean, there's a lot of ASL mono gamers. So now, if you really love Squad Leader but have a hard time finding people, like one of the things you might do is check out, say, maybe you see at some games club, there's a game of High Frontier. Maybe you never heard of it, and you're like, well, I don't think I like that. But what you'll find with High Frontier is that there's a lot of rules. And if you really, one of the things you really like about Squad Leader is the complexity and the you may know it that there's you can look it up on Wikipedia, but people have a varying amounts of need for cognition, and that can be broken down to different types of things. But people get satisfaction out of knowing a lot of rules and figuring out how to work things in. And so, like, again, don't if you're honest about what you like, you may just say, yeah, I do like games that are really hard and have a lot of rules. So in that situation, High Frontier might be, very adjacent to what you like, and all of a sudden you make a whole bunch of new friends and have more gaming to do. Um, or you say, I'm going to bring my copy of Upfront to Friday Night Magic at my local shop, where maybe you go once a month, where you meet 3 buddies who play Squad Leader with you, and see if anybody will play. And then all of a sudden you realize that these card players, like, some of them are more like, okay, there's a card game, I kind of get this, and the World War II, that's great, no problem, and all of a sudden you have something where you're getting your sort of squad leader narrative itch, and you have, again, more people to play with, more times to play, more, I mean, part of it is making it so the hobby is more fun for you. You get more out of it. You find more people the more people that you find like to play your games, then you can winnow out some of the folks that you don't like to play with that you do. Anyhow, that's not to say that everybody in your gaming group isn't great, but I'm usually the guy people want to winnow out. So anyhow, yeah, that's the end of the presentation part. So let me go back. I should be on camera now. Is that true?
Yes, you're on camera.
Okay. So at this point, I thought I timed that pretty good. I thought I'd have 15 minutes or so for questions, and then I'm going to hop over to the Aries channel. So if you have any questions, I'll open up my chat here.
Yes.
Um,
Let's see. We have something from the for the audience here, and just
Yeah.
remember, if someone wants to speak, we can plug you with a microphone. Just make the request to speech on the hub right. However, meanwhile, thank you so much, Jan, for the presentation. That was very interesting, and I will say a lot of golden rule, like the not dividing by 17 games. that's very nice. That's nice. Usually I apply a similar concept with my girlfriend when we are deciding game to play, and it's very nice. Meanwhile, while we are waiting for question, I have a couple that I took notes during the speech. I found very interesting about the case study to brings the connection between the experts and who is not in the field, let's say. So all the work done around using Quartermaster General for teaching officers how to speak probably to politicians and other people that has to take important decision. I found that's very, very interesting. But you had other important feedback out of that. I mean, you saw also some later feedback like, oh, thanks to that, it really improves my communication with an other field and people from other fields or something similar to that.
So are you? I mean, have I seen that Quartermaster General, that people, when they play it, do they feel like that also works in other parts of their life? Is that true? Or I don't know if people think of the gaming as, I'm not sure if I understand what you're asking. I feel like, I think that people people use Quartermaster General as an idea of learning how to manage upwards. I think it would be a good simulation. I think that it's a little bit too thematic in the World War II, that I think that, say, a corporate world would want a game that was probably more, something that they could connect with more. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could be like, ad placement or something, or, even I could imagine, I don't think I would want to do the game write the game but like, as people on a help desk, a corporate computer help desk, could probably benefit from something where, but the thing about it is that it would be too easy to slip into a humor. Like, I don't like, it would be incredibly like worky and not that fun if it wasn't. I don't know if it would be that easy to make fun. Let's just say that on something, because usually I think like people who work on, say, a corporate help desk, it's like it's a bad job. Nobody calls the help desk when they're having a good time.
Yeah, that's true.
So so basically that's it. So you're sort of having.
Completely
So I think
yeah.
a corporate help desk, not that depressing, but I've run help desks, and it's not, you only get yelled at. I mean, I've manned them, and I've also run them, and that's, and then when when the manager, then it's you're also only getting yelled at at full steam, because at that point somebody is asked to speak to the manager.
Yeah, and it's never good when they ask to speak to the manager.
No, never.
That usually doesn't know the answer neither, because you are the expert on the help desk. But hey, let me speak with your boss just for complaining. Yeah,
sure.
That's crazy. So among the chat, I saw that Gotardo has a question. So
okay, sorry.
Competitive and collaborative games. What's your view, and how the market moved from the former to the latter?
Well, I think that a lot of people get, like chess, Go players, one of the big funds is competing. And so, but not everybody likes being hyper competitive. And so I think it has excluded a lot of gamers from the market. And I would say that cooperative games, in my view, is also, when you talk about thematic games, it's really how most of life is cooperative. There is competitive, but and maybe you are spending a lot of time cooperating in order to compete, the way a sports team practices much more than they play. Do you know what I mean? So I think that I personally kind of like both. So I mostly make team games because I feel like you get both. Now, I will say that I have a slight dislike for multiplayer free-for-alls, and it's only my personality because I'm not super comfortable with negotiating my team, like figuring out who I'm enemies with and who I'm not. And the one and only time I played Scythe, I had a terrible experience with it, and I won't get into it too deeply, but basically, I realized that I couldn't be a jerk. I couldn't. The faction I had drawn was sort of the aggressive faction, and the people who I was most likely going to be attacking were just, interpersonally not people. One was a kid, and the other person had, was crying when I walked in about some emotional thing. I was like, oh, good, so basically I just attacked the person that I felt like was ready to be attacked, even though I knew I was going to lose, and that was how it went. And so it was just sort of a weird, but that's sort of an example that sometimes there's bad feelings. And I think a team game, for me, I think one of the things that people really like about Quartermaster General World War II, and they don't know, is because it's this team game, and they really like both being competitive and being part of something a little bit greater themselves, where they can have other people to share a victory and coordinate with. And it's funny just because people may not realize that's the descriptive axis that they're hot for. That like what they're really looking for is that team experience, and there's not that many games that offer it. And some people hate team games and hate having to win or lose based on their teammates' play. And that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, because one of the things that I have problems with my group of friends when we were playing was this free-for-all, like Twilight Imperium and these kind of games that also Game of Thrones, where some way you have to betray at some points players. And that goes on emotional level also, because it's people who are going to order pizza in 20 minutes. And you don't want to have a very awkward dinner because you backstab someone. Instead, Quartermaster General is going that in the sweet spot. Like, okay, we're a team, and we have already a designed team against us. We collaborate with us, and we make more damage as possible to other team because it's our design enemies. So it's like, it's much smoother.
You can't be mad at somebody if at the beginning of the game, they were, in the rules, it assigns them as your opponent, right? I like to say about, people say, oh, when was tell me about the last time you played diplomacy. Oh, do you want to hear about before or after the police arrived? True story.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Okay, so one guy actually hit the other person over the head with a bottle of half-drank whiskey, and then and by the time the police got there, they were already okay, but they took one friend to the hospital so he get the glass removed, and everybody made up, but I never played diplomacy in person again, and I was not one of the people involved, but I was mad. I had an opinion, and it shouldn't be I was on the side of the hitter of the bottle. I should have been on the side of the hittee, but I wasn't. So I thought, well, maybe this game is just a little bit too intense.
Yeah. Sometimes they can go very on, let's say, on personal level and
Yeah,
equate
yeah,
these things.
exactly.
And sometimes can be too much when you just want to enjoy and have a good
Yeah,
evening.
18-year-olds, too. That's how it is. It's everybody is full of hormones, and I was in college. What I realized afterwards, actually, diplomacy, if you play it on a server where you don't know who you're playing against,
Mm-hmm.
but can have private messages, it's much better because then the idea that you go in the other room with somebody or something, you know what I mean? Like nobody knows what secret conversations are going on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're really mad at somebody, you don't know who they are, and that's the end of it. So it's really, that's the more perfect, it's sort of a perfect medium for it in a way. It's, um, but it still means that, it's a game where you're going to have to derive some of your enjoyment of stabbing somebody in the back because that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just by the side now, it's suited everything there, so makes sense. Makes
Um,
sense. And okay, I see there's no other question here, but I have a couple of few because we were
sure.
starting to talk about that before the starting of the speech itself. Which are the most, let's say, strange or unusual settings that they propose you for Quartermaster General? I imagine you be a lot of email by fans like, I don't know, why you don't make a Lord of the Rings Quartermaster. I know that you make also the card game for War of the Rings, but that's different structure. Great game that,
right.
by the way, but something like that happens?
Well, certainly. Well, the short answer of that is that the first War of the Ring card game started as a Quartermaster General, Lord of the Rings. But
Ooh, nice.
but we won't get. That's a long time ago.
Okay.
And then things um life goes on, and but that basically I think that it would have been very duplicative with War of the Ring in the end. It would have kind of been like, this is almost the same product.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, to the people who love it, they'd be like, no, it's different. But like to most people, like, if you think about a retailer's shelf or in a gamer's shelf, you know what I mean? It's kind of sits in the same spot.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm. Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
I think that the one that I saw the was one called, somebody was really desperate for the Great Northern War, which was like Sweden and Finland. And I had actually honestly never heard of it
Okay.
at the point. And I was like, wow, I didn't even admit it. I'm assuming this Scandinavian is not on this call and was probably not going to now download this. And if they did, well, and uh, long and short is that I was like, okay, that's, I think that of all of the things I've heard, there's many, and of different varying levels of interest. Um, but the toughest thing is making sure that I know enough about the period that I can write a set of cards that tells that story. So when you're playing Quartermaster General, I hope people read the card titles, because by reading the card titles, there's kind of a story that's, if you just read the card titles and maybe the space affected, like Land Battle, Western Europe, you could basically just read those off and you would give that as a story to somebody and they'd know a lot about the game, and you know what I mean, and might experience some of the excitement of it, like just like I was that sort of example of the Smolensk battle. um and so if I'm making, so some subject matter is just like, I don't know enough about it and it's not interesting enough for me to research it, or I feel like it would be too difficult. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on a Napoleonic, which people have been asking for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk a little bit more in the next thing I go to. But somebody approached me who was like an amateur but heavy duty Napoleonic scholar.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, if can we work on it together? And I'm like, if you're the one who has to make sure it validates, but I have to it has to feel right. And so I'm almost in the gamer seat in this regard, because I'm sitting there and I'm saying, does this make me feel like I was through the whole Napoleonic Europe, or not? So there were things like, for example, I said, look, I know that a lot of people would say don't start it until say 1801 or 1802, whatever. Like, so that first part, but as just like an American where you don't, it's Napoleon's just not heavily studied in school, and it was never, it's not that much on TV, etc. Like, you have to have the pyramids. You have to have the Napoleon in Italy stand on the horse. That's I can't remember the official term, but when the horse is on two legs. But that painting, is about him in Italy. Like, all of that has to be there, or I didn't experience Napoleon. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, that makes it more complicated because it's sort of slightly two different eras. And, all of these different things. So I was sort of like, so I'm basically sitting here kind of, giving him negative feedback until he gets it just right. and then we're gonna switch around. Anyhow, I'm gonna talk more about that in just a few minutes.
Yeah. There was here the RS game itself saying that in just a few minutes in the RS channels, you're going to go more on deep on the topic. So
that's right.
So that's great. That was fantastic. I mean, telling you, really, your games are some of that I play very often with my game group, and I always sponsorize them, making tutorials on my YouTube channel. That's fantastic. Very good design. It's incredible. Everybody loves them. It's so easy and so realistic at the same time. That is.
Oh, thank you so much for the compliments. It's hard to know. It's like I just do them, and and we're pretty much again, my wife is my main feedback, and usually I can tell from her, if she's having a really good time, then I know we're onto something, and if I still have to sort of drag her to get it to do, then you know what I mean. And that's for all the games, But anyhow, I'm going to say bye now, just so I can get on the other channel and figure out, and actually get the correct presentation up, etc.
Sounds perfect. Thank you again. And
okay,
guys,
thank you so much.
Let's see you on RS Games.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.